Okay. We're going to have to skip some steps because of time. Any one of you can speak, but I'll prefer to select just to save time further. What does digital transformation or corporate innovation mean to you? Ashley.
All right, thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here. Good afternoon, everybody. For me, I think digital transformation is really recognizing the central role that digital needs to play in all businesses in the future and positioning effectively for the fourth industrial revolution.
Fantastic. Foluso, I know you work with ASCON and you having to do a lot of digital transformation for a ton of organizations. I'd like to hear your input as to what digital transformation can mean.
Okay, thank you very much, Bolu. I'm also delighted to be here. For me, I think it's really about building organizational capabilities for businesses to succeed, leveraging digital or technology. They can either be inwards facing, when you're looking at improving efficiencies, or external facing in terms of winning in the marketplace. But ultimately, it's in response to either internal stimuli around what the business is trying to do, or the market stimuli. And it's just using technology to do that. Thank you.
I mean, while Foluso is still on that thought, I would like to ask you, when does digital transformation become necessary for a business?
So, for me, from experience, I think it's like any evolution as well. It's a response to the need to survive and to thrive in your marketplace. So I believe strongly that every business is a digital business or can be a digital business. And if you look deep enough, either along your customer access, being able to leverage data to make better decision making, being able to organize and connect your partners better, there's always that role that technology can do better than humans or can play better. I honestly am an advocate of collaboration between humans and technology. I think we both have our strengths and weaknesses, but I think you can find a role for it in any business, notwithstanding the size or age.
I'm a huge fan of Peter Drucker. He was referred to as the Dean of Wall Street. He said something. He said, those who bring about innovation in a field oftentimes come from other fields, other industries. The next person who's going to be answering my question is somebody who has gone across many industries, from Tizeti to, Decagon to oil and gas and so on and so forth. That person is Justina. Justina, I want to ask you a question. How do you get an entire company? Because when you had to go through all those industries, not just companies, all those industries, you met a certain level of culture that was responsible for the driving force of innovation in that company. And of course, you had to adapt, you had to learn, and you had to improve on this culture. My question is, how did you get the buy-in of the entire team, senior management, all the way down to the last person?
Thank you very much for that question. Everything starts and ends with the top, right? As a company, you have to examine your leadership and to thyself be true. Do you really mean to innovate, right? When innovation becomes a company's culture, it will be obvious in the way that execution is carried out. You will find that they will put their money where their mouth is as well, right? Resource would go into it. Leadership, who really are the models within an organization, would have to sort of imbibe the innovative process. It's not okay to outsource it to the IT team, and then when you speak to the CEO about projects that are ongoing, and it's not okay to say, oh, let me call my head of IT. If you really mean to innovate, you have to sort of absorb the process as a fabric. Communication plays another huge role in digital transformation within organization, right? I also have background in PR, so there has to be a strategy in breaking it down for team members who work in cross-functional teams to get on board, right? You also have to start small so that you can demonstrate the impact that you're trying to build, right? Get a small test team, try out a few things, share the success story with the team, get their input on it. Their buy-in is very critical because they are co-executors. Another important thing which most organizations miss is that they often try to do it by themselves, right? There are professionals out there who are agile coaches that can help organizations transform digitally. There are corporate organizations who consult for institutions to help them digitize, right? If you bring them on board and there is an an adoption planning phase so that people don't feel choked, right? And you carry them along, and there is corporate commitment, board level corporate commitment, in the same way that we're committed to KPIs and execution. I believe that you will get a lot more participation within the organization. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm coming back to you and then to Damilare. But if anybody here knows anything about financial inclusion, or you've studied about financial inclusion, you must have come across, enhancing financial innovation and access. EFINA, the documentation. Has anybody seen any report like that? Fantastic. Nope, just him. You guys need to read. Okay, a few hands, yeah. Ashley headed research for many of those presentations or those documentation that you must have read. And Ashley, I want to ask you, how can senior management, right, best support innovation for traditional organizations? And how can co-founders of startups create a sustainable innovation culture for their organization?
Thank you. It's a great question. And actually, our friends from UK government who are the donors supporting that AFINA research are here. So in terms of the leadership, right, to build on what Justina had shared around innovation, I think for CEOs, we have to think about a few things. And some of it is going to be change for our people, right? But I think to embed innovation into your company, you need to think about culture, processes, and skills. And all of these things can either kill innovation if you don't think about it or if you let them go wrong, but they can also be deliberately built to support innovation. And that's true for large companies as well as new startups. So in terms of where did I start? Culture, I think. Your culture, do you have a high power distance culture, very authoritarian culture, where only the highest paid person's opinion carries in every meeting? Or do you have a company in which staff at all levels feel comfortable asking questions, offering their opinions, maybe even sometimes questioning management in a respectful way, right? There are many other ways you can build innovative cultures. And I would say for startups, startups often start with an innovative culture. One of their challenges is scaling culture. And that actually tends to be one of the primary challenges in scaling a business effectively, is actually scaling the culture effectively. Because when you have five people, your culture is those 5 people, the co-founders and a few other people. But you have to be deliberate in scaling an innovative culture. On the skills side, innovation, some people think that people are inherently creative or innovative, or they're not. But the truth is that innovation can be taught, just like other skills. And so at Semicolon, we actually start, whether we're training software engineers, whether we're working with early stage ventures, we always start with design thinking, because that's a way of teaching innovation, basically both mindsets, approaches, methods, and tools. So you can actually train your workforce on those skills using design thinking and other methods. And then I would say last, the processes, right? So you can have great culture, great skills, but if your policies and your processes, the way people are rewarded or punished, if that doesn't encourage innovation, then your innovation just dies, right? So your teams, oftentimes we have to be really deliberate about the way we set goals, the way we manage team level and individual level performance, to be clear about targets and objectives, but allow space for managing risk. And 2 kind of theoretical frameworks I advise for that is one, lean startup theory, which recognizes sort of the need to balance consistent vision with pivoting on strategy and execution, and then using objectives and key results instead of KPIs. Interesting.
I was going to ask a question, but I want to skip it because I really want to hear Damilare's thoughts on something. I have a friend who was one of the people who put the Nigerian startup bill together, and he said something very funny. He said it appears to be that banks are trying to become fintechs, and fintechs are trying to become banks, right? So the question now is, traditional organizations have been embracing digital transformation for a while, right? And they're exploring collaborative opportunities with startups and so on and so forth. Based on the context in which I've started this question, How do you think it will affect the competitive landscape?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. And I think that question is very out for me, seeing that I spent the first 10 years of my career in a traditional banking that industry, moving from one bank to the bank. And I know there are many times when we try to collaborate or do some things with some fintechs and it failed, and some were successful. What I've come to realize over the years is this. We do not seem to think of collaboration between the traditional financial services and the digital financial services, in quote, startups and fintechs. Instead, we see it as a competition. The moment the traditional guys tweak their mindset to say, you know what, I'm collaborating, I'm not competing, then the landscape becomes open to everybody. But currently, you hear, no, don't open that data source to this guy. They will steal our customers because they are agile. You know, typically when I was the bank, they will tell you that it takes a traditional bank 2 years to build a particular solution. That same solution, it takes a fintech 2 months tops to build it. So because the banks know already that these guys are very agile and will go to market before them, they do not think of collaboration. What comes in this competition? So I would answer that question in a different manner to say the moment we take off that cap of competition and wear the cap of collaboration, we then begin to see, let me say we begin to see light at the end of the tunnel. But then again, to wrap up on that part, I think when collaboration happens, what you see in the landscape is one of operational efficiency, one. Two, you also see these same traditional institutions, the tech companies open them up to new markets. Because let's be very serious. I have worked in this place and I know how bureaucracy ties these people down. And so once you're collaborating with a fintech, as a traditional institution, all of a sudden your mindset changes because who you are working with is moving fast. Yeah. And you are 150 years old, you are 200 years old. You don't want to disgrace yourself. You want to move. So there's so much to say about that, but I think by the time you take off that competitive mindset and where the collaborative one, we begin to see these things move.
So Damilare said something, Foluso, I'm coming to you. Damilare said something about, sometimes it might take a traditional institution 2 years to build something that a startup can do in 2 months, 3 months, right? And but in some of these traditional institutions, you see some of the people who can build these things. Some of them, they don't jackpot, right? Now the question is, what strategies have been successful, right, in attracting and managing top talents in this context, perhaps for a traditional institution or a case where you have a JV between a startup and a traditional institution?
Okay, thanks, Bolu. Now, interestingly, no one has the solution to how to keep people in here. So you need to be more innovative, recognizing that people will leave. But there are a few things that companies have done to retain their best talent. Now, you discover that the bigger an organization is, the less connected you are to the purpose and to the center of it. So you tend to lose talent easier the bigger the company becomes. For smaller startups, they tend to have a cause, something they're going after. If you have great leadership that communicates that, builds the message around it, when you're sourcing for talent, sit across them and tell them the impact you are trying to make, and let them believe, that this is the biggest thing you could be doing at this point in time. So I think that for small companies, they have their strengths. They are more flexible. It's more fun working there. They can respond faster to the things in the market. So people like that kind of environment because it empowers them more. The bigger a company gets, you need to have controls. If not, you have chaos and anarchy.
Right.
And what that does is that it restricts how people can respond in those markets. So I think that what you do is to make it exciting, build your employer brand, make it fun, create a purpose around your business. And then you need to develop the leadership within the tech business as well. I know now, to succeed, you need to have a balance of experienced hands. They might not be as innovative, but they bring in the processes, the stability, and the creative people. But you see a lot of older talent are a bit reluctant about startups.
Yeah.
It's unstable.
Yeah.
The culture can be a bit chaotic.
Yeah.
So you need to also find that balance between, speed, agility, and some level of stability that works for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for that, please. That was a brilliant point. Brilliant point. Now, for want of time, I'm going to ask Justina and Ashley one question, and you take turns to answer. And I'm starting with Justina first. And I've asked the question in some form some paragraphs ago, so I'm going to ask it in a fresh way. How can startup ecosystems, or startups as it were, how can they really create an environment that fosters this innovation? Because Ashley said something about scaling culture when you get to a certain point, which becomes difficult for people. And you haven't worked inter-industries. You've seen this happen time and again. What is the one thing that someone here should leave with in creating and sustaining an environment of innovation?
Thank you for that question. When we talk about digital innovation, it's a science in a sense. So experimentation is part of science, right?
Yeah.
Where people are allowed to fail and where a team should feel psychologically safe, right? In that process of iteration and transformation. But if you're a startup here, you cannot become successful off just experimentation, right?
Gotcha.
There has to come a point where the real value of the product, you need to do your homework, right? You only have so many chances to fail at something. You need to recognize your seasons. When am I a startup? 0 to 2 years. After 2 years, what is expected of me, right? You can't be a 10-year-old institution and you're making mistakes that, junior founders are making. And so I would encourage every startup here to sort of build internal framework, right? And execution strategies sort of to entrench you in your transformation process.
Fantastic.
I also encourage partnerships. That is one of my greatest superpowers as in my entire career journey. And I'll flip it. You look at Microsoft, right, as a big technology company. I'm so impressed with the way that Microsoft has continued to innovate itself. It's over 40 years old, but in the last 10 years, it's done so much.
Yeah.
They are one of the leading investors into OpenAI, right? That's sort of, they have gotten with the program because digital happens really quickly. It's so easy to go obsolete no matter how old you are in the game. Yeah. And right now they are producing papers with, OpenAI. It's almost unheard of before now. The last thing I want to say is that I encourage entrepreneurs to raise intrapreneurs within their organization. You need to get your team to begin to think business, right? As opposed to just individual contribution. When you have intrapreneurs within the company, it will be equal to having 10 entrepreneurs working in there. And that way you're able to really optimize quickly and sort of prepare your company for the new realities of our digital economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ashley, do you want to add to that? Yeah.
Yes, I think, and I think Justina made some really important points. So just to sort of build on one direction, which I think is around preparing for scale, right? So she spoke about knowing what stage your company is. And early stage startups oftentimes are experimental. And as she mentioned, it's not just chaos, right? There are methods, tools, strategies, frameworks we can use to experiment effectively in a direction. But I think that a lot of companies then struggle to sustain that as they're scaling. So building the entrepreneurs is one important way. I think that there are a few points. One is that in order to scale, you need to have some structure and processes. So a startup is sort of organized chaos, but now you need to sort of put some policies, procedures, something that's sort of right-sized and balanced for the company in place in order to be able to scale up. As I mentioned, I think that thinking about scaling culture is really critical, and I think that's something that every startup should be really deliberate in planning for, like should have a written plan on and execution on that. I think when we work with human resources people, which I know some of us have, I've found, some of them could be more strategic. So I think that really seeing your people management function as a really strategic function is critical, because innovation at the end of the day comes down 100% to the people.
Right.
The people on individual level, and then how they're able to work together effectively and efficiently as a team. And then the last point I'll make is that I think to Justina's point around leadership. So I've seen some really interesting, high potential, early stage companies. They've made initial traction and success. Maybe they've raised a few $1 million in funding.
Right.
I don't think those companies are going to scale, and it's 100% because of poor leadership.
Right.
Right? So, I mean, I think, we saw the horrible bosses, whatever, trending. And it's not just in startups, right? We see some of those behaviors in big banks and corporates as well, where the managerial approach seems to just be shouting all the way down the chain.
Right.
But to build entrepreneurs, to attract and retain people who are truly going to be innovative, to be able to scale your company at all, you need to build and empower a whole crew of leaders. And in order to do that, you need to have the right leadership skills yourself. And so I would suggest to founders to really think about that. Maybe take a look in the mirror. It's quite possible all the leadership you've been exposed to has been very authoritarian or in one style, and you want to maybe try a different style. And I would say maybe have a circle of trusted advisors.
Right.
I heard somebody use the phrase, you allowed to see the weeds, right? Yeah. Who can be really honest coaches that you actually listen to. So they're, not your staff, but some people who can really speak to you candidly. So you can get an honest read on whether you're becoming a toxic boss as
Right.
you're pushing for results and execution, or whether you're really have the leadership skills in order to take that company to the next level.
All right. Thank you, everyone. This has been a very short 20 minutes to kind of tap into or pick their brains. So this panel session was recorded. So do well to go back and listen, because they try to succinctly, say certain things that it's easy to miss. So you have to go back to listen to it. So I encourage everybody here to go back and listen to it. As we close, I want to ask very funny questions. Damilare, we know that you are giving startups some money. So if you're a startup founder, raise up your hand and you're looking for money. Where are you? There are plenty. Right? So please, if you're looking for money and you have proper traction, a very good product, just, I'm sure Lagos Startup Week will make ARM's website active and available to everybody. And then, because he goes through a lot of pitch decks day in, day out. So please make sure yours comes up on top. Great Ife, sir. Great Ife. What you studied in school and what you are doing now, is there any correlation?
Close. Yeah.
Okay, it's not like me that studied bricklaying and now I'm in fintech. I understand.
Yeah. So brilliant. Just as a parting shot for me.
Right.
Please, founders, fall in love with your customers and their problems and not your technology.
Sorry.
That's a big problem that I found.
Founders, fall in love with your customers and not just your technology.
Yeah. Then look for diversity. You can't innovate if you have all the same kind of people. So the diversity also helps. I just wanted to chip that into those two parts.
Interesting.
So thanks.
Justina, just one question. I mean, knowing how many things you have done and how many things you're doing, question, because I know some founders experience a lot of pressure, trying to impress their investors, get traction and all that. How do you detox? How do you calm down? How do you have fun? Our time is already up, but I want you. Yeah.
Okay, there are a few people here in the crowd that know me, and I'm also known as a soft life queen.
Right.
Anyways, it just goes to say that you have to find time to decompress. You have to be intentional about it. Sometimes I go, as you can afford, not always so, weekend away with the family, watch a movie, read a book, and be kind to yourself. You're doing all right, and you have your whole life ahead of you. Thank you.
This is very deep, because there was a founder who died of hypertension. That was 2 years ago, and he was just 23. So this is really deep stuff that she just said that many of us do not know. Please, let's put our hands together for our panelists as we stand.
Let me just quickly add to what you said about fundraising. So Correctly so, I look at over how many pitch decks every day, and many applications are coming through the pipelines. And I realize that founders, when you're coming to raise money, some people will give money to guys who are pre-revenue stage. But if you're coming to a company who is looking at guys in revenue and post-revenue stage, do well to make sure that you are giving right figures, number one. And in terms of your value proposition, if I have Shegun doing payment processing today, and Shegun is already doing MRR of say $10,000-$20,000 a month, and you're doing the same payment processing, and you've been in the same business the same time Shegun started, and you're doing $1,000, come on. So just to advise, when we're coming in to say we want to raise money, make sure what you are selling, I like to put it like we're in the market, what you are selling has a unique value proposition. For Shegun to copy it, he needs to really think about it. And guess what? Nigeria has 10,000 problems, so we have 10,000 founders.
Amazing.
So just take it like that.
Please, a round of applause for every one of them. Please, let's
Thank you.